Good afternoon, everyone. I hope you've been enjoying the first day of Capitol Hill Ocean Week 2016 here at oceanslive.org. I'm your host, Kate Thompson, for Capitol Hill Ocean Talk. Before we start, I want to give a special shout out to those of you watching at home. Don't forget to be part of our conversation and tweet us questions at #chow26live.org on oceanslive.org. Special ocean places like National Marine Sanctuaries are open to everyone for responsible recreation. But several studies suggest that participation in outdoor activities in places like national parks and other protected areas is actually lowest among non-white communities and individuals. Today, we'll explore how special places like national parks and national marine sanctuaries are working with diverse groups to create a more inclusive, accessible recreation experience. In the studio today, I am very happy to be joined by Chris Barnes, the National to the and Stewardship Liaison to the National Region for the National Park Service. Chris works to promote participation in citizen science initiatives in national parks to engage urban and underserved communities in biodiversity discovery. He's also an alumnus of the National Park Service's BioBlitz program. Also joining us is Jose Gonzalez, the founder of Latino Outdoors, which seeks to connect Latino communities and leadership with nature and outdoor experiences. An experienced formal and informal educator, Jose is also a founding member of the Latino Conservation Alliance, a board member for California Relief, and serves on the Urban Committee of the National Park Service Advisory Board. We're also joined in the studio by Brittany Leavitt, a leader with Outdoor Afro, a cutting-edge network that celebrates and inspires African-American connections and leadership in nature. Also joining us is Jay Haigler, Diving Safety Officer for the Scientific Diving Program of the National Association of Black Scuba, also a director. Jay is also a director with Diving with a Purpose, a volunteer underwater archaeology program that began under partnership with the National Association of Black Scuba Divers and the National Park Service. Last but not least, we are also joined by Vernon Smith, the National Media Coordinator for NOAA's Office of National Marine Sanctuaries, which serves as a trustee for a network of underwater parks encompassing more than 170,000 square miles of marine and Great Lakes waters. Thanks everyone for joining me today in the studio. I'm really excited about this panel and the discussion we're about to have. So I actually want to start out with an icebreaker because, you know, it can always be nerve-wracking to be on a TV show. So with that, I'm going to show you 3 pictures today, and I want you to give me one word for what that picture feels to you. So let's go ahead. Here's our first picture. Go ahead, Chris.
It's easy, it's beautiful.
Beautiful.
Breathtaking.
Okay. Breathtaking.
Serene.
Serene. Awe-inspiring.
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 Serenity.
Serenity. Okay, our next picture. Chris.
Tall.
Majestic.
Beautiful.
Scenic.
Peaceful.
Peaceful. Our next one.
Where I want to be.
You guys are cheating. You're using more than one word. Jose.
Familia.
Ah.
Humbling.
Wonderful.
Amazing.
Amazing. Okay, so I've heard amazing, wonderful, serene, Jay. Inspiring, 2 words, Jay. I want to be there, Chris. I mean, these are all words that gives me goosebumps. I want to be there as well. So each of you works for an amazing organization, and that's your job, that's your mission, to try to get people to invoke those same feelings going to places like a question. So I'm going to ask you each a question. With your organization, I'm going to start with you, Chris. How do you invoke those same feelings in others?
I think the National Park Service is lucky is that we've been mandated to protect the most beautiful places in America. So we can kind of just sit back and say, hey, this is one of the most beautiful places you can visit in America. Come here, come visit us and see and these inspiring images that we just saw on the screen.
I would say,
Jose.
I would say, you know, the work that we do is really based around community. And so that idea about community and especially the family structure. And one of the things about bringing the culture, we say cultura, which is the comfort and familiarity of that experience. So to be able to take that and connect that to a natural space, it just strengthens and amplifies the experience. So we don't only get to remember the redwoods or the Grand Canyon or the beach and whatnot, but we get to now connect that with the family and cultural experience, and that's just going to resonate much longer.
Yeah. Brittany.
Going along with the Jose, definitely with incorporating our, but also kind of incorporating our history as well, because we have so much history with the outdoors. Along the lines of with the Buffalo Soldiers, who were one of the first to actually help protect Yosemite and Sequoia from Harriet Tubman, who besides constructing the Underground Railroad, she was also an astronomer, conservation. So trying to help our community understand our history on our hikes while being out on our hikes or doing boating trips or, climbing trips as well.
Great, thanks, Brittany. Jay.
Well, one of the things that we primarily focus on is telling the story and bringing that story to our national park community and to our national parks and the marine sanctuaries. Now, we have kind of a twofold thing, both terrestrial and submerged. And that cultural is something, that history and that cultural story is something that connects us, and it's a part of that entire landscape.
Nice. Vernon.
Well, much like Chris, I have the privilege of working for an agency whose mission is to very protect and conserve very special places in the ocean and Great Lakes. And it's also part of our mandate to try to bring these places to people and to try to help them develop an ocean stewardship ethic.
So, Chris, there has been some studies. I mean, you work for the Park Service. One of the studies was through the Park Service, and one of the studies was also through the Forest Service on, why are these barriers happening? Why is it that it's been a mostly white audience that has come to recreate in our parks and in our forests? And I just wanted to ask you, what are some of those barriers that keep people predominantly from recreating in our public lands?
I think there's a myriad of explanations for it, but we understand that our communities are actually participating in the outdoors, but they're not coming to the national park lands, the federal lands, the public lands. And it could be because of entrance fees. It could be because of transportation to get to these. They're in remote areas. Actually getting there is rather expensive. So it's a socioeconomic explanation for it. But there's also, like what you hear from the other panelists, is that are they hearing the right story when they get there? Are they hearing the story that compels them to come back and feel relevant in these natural spaces?
So, Jose, from the Latino community side of things, what do you think the issues are? I mean, they're the ones spending the most money on outdoor equipment, but they might not be camping in a national park. Why is that?
Yeah, and I'm familiar with the stories, right, or the studies. And I think a piece of that comes back. We've all mentioned story a lot because it has a lot of power in our communities. A lot of times it is important to understand the data, but there's a saying that data makes you credible, stories make you memorable. And that's important for our communities because that's been always a powerful way to connect and share information, connection, value. And so that's important to pair with the data about like, well, you should experience these places without just opening up the invitations. All of those barriers are important as were mentioned in terms of transportation, cost, gear, and whatnot. But we found that the most important and easiest barrier to break is, and sometimes it's invitation. And sometimes I say easiest because if we have the right representatives and leaders and ambassadors and we're giving those opportunities to do that, it's doable. When we ignore or miss that part and we just say, well, why come? XYZ community doesn't come, we're not starting from the right place. Rather, is what is it that we don't understand about how we're not supporting a community's connections and history to these places, and then go from there.
Okay. So, Chris, the National Park Service is celebrating its centennial this year, 100 years of national parks, pretty impressive. So I know that they did these studies to better understand the people that come to the parks and to get other people to come and enjoy the parks because it is everyone's place. We all support national parks through our tax dollars. So tell us a little bit about what the Park Service has done. I know I've found that they have put together an outreach agenda to be able to outreach better to these different communities. Can you tell us a little bit more about what they're doing?
Yeah, so 100 years of the Park Service, we have a call to action to every single park, different mandates of how they should be doing outreach, and one of them is the urban agenda, and that calls for putting in more diverse programmatic experiences in your park system. So each park the 400 plus parks are being challenged to put together programs that are going to bring diverse communities to their parks. Funding go out there and outreach, and there's funding capabilities behind that, where they're giving money for transportation to bring kids to the parks. And really try to, the Find Your Park campaign is another big one, just like getting people out there. It doesn't necessarily have to be a national park, but just find.
Brittany, I know, right. So Brittany, I know Outdoor Afro oftentimes does hikes, goes to national parks, taking groups to national parks, whether it be youth or anyone that really wants to go on your hikes. Can you tell us a little bit about why it's so important to break down those stereotypes so people feel comfortable and enjoy themselves?
Yeah, I feel like, especially nowadays, we're not national parks, or not going to the national parks, or just to actual urban parks in general. So having that, you know, we're putting ourselves out via social media, via word that we do these hikes, or we'll go climbing, or making sure that everyone goes swimming, just making sure that everyone can see that we actually do this and we do it in a comfortable and safe environment. Because that could be another thing, you want to go on a hike, but you don't want to go alone. You want to experience something, but you don't want to do it, and where to find it in a more comfortable setting, and that's kind of what we're trying to bring about.
Right, right. So Vernon, you work for an ocean conservation agency, but you grew up in the middle of the country in Kansas City. Good Lord, man, why did you want to get involved in the outdoors, and what keeps having you come back?
Well, I think the main reason that I got involved was because it came through fishing. I enjoyed fishing as a little kid, fishing in local ponds and lakes, and through that experience, I got a chance to experience nature. And unfortunately, a lot of young people who grow up in places like Kansas City or in the inner city, don't have those types of experience. So that becomes a barrier for them. Everyone here has talked about stories, the importance of stories. Well, if you're interested, if agencies like NOAA and the Park Service are really interested in trying to bring more diversity to the parks and ocean, it's important that we acknowledge the stories that have percolated throughout the years. For example, within the African American community, one of the barriers, frankly, is the fact that the legacy of Jim Crow segregation, which prevented people from learning how to swim in neighborhood parks. Another barrier, frankly, is the lack of in models, even in advertising. If you look at an outside magazine, for example, how often do you see a person of color in the magazine who looks like me?
So, yeah. So, you had mentioned swimming, and I mean, just going swimming had been a social barrier before. Jay, I'm just gonna, Dr. Jones, I forget when did NABS, what year did you start?
Yeah, well, I guess the original organization is called the Underwater Adventure Seekers, and Dr. Jones started that in 1959.
Yeah. And
so we're celebrating 57 years, and we are the largest and the oldest African-American scuba diving club worldwide. And in 1991, Dr. Jones, along with his friend Rick Powell, started the National Association of Black Scuba Divers.
I mean, that's pretty impressive, considering these barriers of even being able to go swimming, right? I mean, how do you go diving in 1959? I mean, and have the confidence to do it, and understanding these barriers. I mean, that is huge to me that he did that.
Well, yes, it is. But there's a barrier, there's an opportunity. Dr. Jones learned scuba diving while serving in the Army in the Korean War. So when he came back, and he was a Purple Heart recipient and continued scuba diving. And because of those barriers, literally, there were no people that was willing to train him. And so, necessity is the mother of invention. So that thus created the Underwater Adventure Seekers. So, and one thing led to another. And so we have over 100 members locally, and we do community outreach. And we first start with teaching how to swim, snorkel, and then scuba dive.
Nice. Well, Jose, I also work for an ocean conservation agency with Vernon, and I'm particularly interested in going beyond just enjoying the ocean to making a difference and for protecting it. And I know that Latino Outdoors your mission is to create a space for community to be present, share voices, and have their roots and ingrained in Latino cultura, as you mentioned earlier, for generations. Can you tell me more about those conservation roots? Because that's what I'm trying to do in my job, is go from enjoyment to wanting to be a steward to help conserve.
Definitely, and we have that phrase that you protect the places you love, right? Or first you have to have that care, understand what it is to go into, understand what is it that you care about and want to protect. And that idea of cultura, is just culture in English. We have an expression similar to like a conservation cultura, meaning that we are all conservationists in one way or another, but the way in which it's framed or understood will just have different roots. And a lot of communities, especially Latino communities, don't automatically identify as conservationists in the traditional frame and model we think of in English until you start looking at the practices, like, I do that, or I do that, or I do that, and I do that, but we do it. That's been part of the practice without thinking about it as a separate conservation identity. Recognizing that, so that's important, because recognizing that you have that value, that ability, and then that action piece, it's really critical, because all of a sudden a community is able to understand and see, oh, I do have a role to like. This is what it can look like, because I did not understand, or I was not informed, or even I was not supported in knowing that these practices that we've been doing for generations can have a big impact. And that's important in the way in which we talk about like Latino engagement. And again, trying to break down, and so if your narrative is really powerful. And so if you have a mainstream narrative that treats all Latinos as recent immigrants, what you're saying is you're new, you need to be educated, you don't get it, you need to be included into our understanding your culture. Without understanding, we've had Latino communities since the founding of the United States in most places. And in 1776, when we had this migration from east to west with British, the colonies, at the same time, literally in 1776, you had Afro, Mestizo, Latino families migrating from Mexico into California. And so that's what we're talking about. Those roots have been there for generations.
Right. So, Vernon, we've been talking about thing, and we've been talking about getting in the water. What are National Marine Sanctuaries doing to help create a more inclusive outdoor environment, and to get more Americans of different ethnic backgrounds, whether economic positions, religion, socioeconomic positions, and ages as well? I mean, we haven't even touched on the youth here yet, getting there, but what are National Marine Sanctuaries trying to do to bring people to these special places?
Well, I think first and foremost, National Marine Sanctuaries are trying to raise awareness about the importance of protecting the fact that all is in the ocean, and the fact that all of us have a role in helping to maintain the health of these places. And so we've, over the last 5-7 years, we've launched a number of initiatives to try to, for one, bring the ocean to the people, for example, through live interactive web broadcasts. We've had some broadcasts from Thunder Bay National Marine Sanctuary and Lake Huron, also in the Florida Keys Sanctuary, where to show students who perhaps maybe in the Midwest, like I was when I was younger, show them how the ocean affects them, and give them the opportunity through this incredible technology that's available now to actually engage with scientists underwater, which I think is just fantastic and amazingly cool. Another effort that we've launched involves the Oceans for Life. This was a program in which we were able to bring some students from the Middle East to our sanctuaries and have them engage in sort of a cross-cultural exchange with students here in America. The point of this is to try to show these young people that there's one ocean, and that this ocean connects and impacts us all. Another initiative that I think Jay has some familiarity with is the Youth Education Summit that we do in partnership with NABS. A fantastic opportunity for young people to get to explore the sanctuaries, engage with some of our scientists, and hopefully motivate them to consider careers in marine science and resource.
Right, and I'm partial to the live broadcasts because I was the one on the other end. But we partnered with both NABS and then our Merito program in California, and we end in English. The show's in Spanish and in English, and it was so awesome to see the kids asking questions because one of the aquanauts who actually is he's from where is he from? Puerto Rico. That's where he was from. But he was saturated talking to the kids in Spanish, and it was so awesome to get them fired up and inspired about being there. And then we also had NABS groups there too, and it was probably one of the coolest broadcasts I've ever done. Let's just put it that way. Very, very, very cool.
Well, Kate, let me just say that both Sanctuary has done, Park Service and the National Marine Sanctuary has done an excellent job in partnering with strategic partners to get the word out, to tell that story, that connectivity. And as you said, with our Youth Education Summit, say as a result of that, we have one student who is Rachel Stewart, who will be doing on another panel this week. She has decided to major in environmental science. She is now a scientific diver, and so as a result of this partnership, both with the National Marine Sanctuary and National Park Service, now we are creating these young stewards, and now it becomes a peer-to-peer. And as we start to reach out to our sister organizations, Junior Scientists in the Sea, we're starting to get that word out, and it becomes easier to tell the story. When a young person tells a young person a story, it's more effective and it has more impact than one of our older people telling the story.
Right.
So again, again, thank you for both your organizations' continued support in getting that word out and helping support being a steward of the ocean and conservationists.
Yeah. Well, I've met some amazing students through that program. Cuello is one of my favorites. He's an amazing guy. Man now.
Yes,
that was
exactly.
like 7 years ago.
Exactly.
But back to you, Brittany. I'm just going to come back to you. Your organization, Outdoor Afro, was recently chosen as one of the 4 groups to be named Trailblazers by the Children Outdoors Network. They specifically highlighted a program created by your founder, RUMAP, called Healing Walks. Can you tell us a little bit about this program and what she wants to achieve and you want to achieve through that program?
Healing Walks is what we've been doing since we've had through the news, a lot of happening in our communities, and we figured to take time on the weekends or in the days and just either going to a national park or even an urban park, just having a walk and just talking through our walks about how we're feeling right now. Nature is one of the best ways to relieve stress and to kind of talk about your feelings comfortable. Open space where everyone feels comfortable, from young to old. And we've been doing a lot of these healing walks when we've had a lot of stuff that's going on with police and a lot of stuff going on in the urban community. So it was a great way to be able to do that.
Yeah, it seems like a really amazing, I mean, some of the photographs you shared with us of all the different kids having great fun by the fire and all that kind of stuff, telling stories, making people comfortable. I think it's a great program. Congratulations on it, for sure. Hopefully that we could participate sometime. So Chris, numerous studies have talked about the exposure that nature can have in improving memory. Last year we had a panel about, we had a doctor on who actually prescribed nature. And I'm like, give me some of that medicine. I'll take it all the time. But it can improve concentration, it can improve grades. I mean, educators like myself, even a short break, even a short break outside can get kids to be more fired up and more inspired to learn after they've been outside for even 15 to 20 minutes. But studies in UK all over basically have said that green exercise can produce improvements like the reduction of stress and self-esteem promotion and benefit everyone. So I just want to talk to you a little bit, Chris, about some of the different things that you guys have going on in the outdoors for students, like Every Kid in a Park, those kinds of things. You've been specifically involved in the coolest programs, and that is the coolest program. I witnessed one because we have a National Marine Sanctuary right next to a national park at Channel Islands, and there was a recent BioBlitz out there. I know there was one. Why is it why is it so important to get youth involved in these programs and to show them what it's like to do the research, to be the citizen scientists?
Yeah, for everything that everyone said, it's like it's connecting them to the resource back and care about the resource so they can come back and actually want to be in these conservation fields. Yeah, the BioBlitz is a great experience. It's 10 years culminating with our partnership with the National Geographic, where we had a huge National Mall festival. Actually, when you were talking about Channel Islands, we did a live dive with Sylvia Earle.
Right.
That was broadcast on the National Mall. That program's been great, where we've specifically focused on getting diverse communities on the first day and come to the mall, learn about biodiversity conservation, and spark that curiosity in them, and then take them out with scientists on different inventories and all different parks, and they look at the different parks in the area. And it's like, we're going to go do a bat inventory, or we're going to do an earthworm inventory, or a bird walk, just to get them connected to the space and see what is out there and get experiences. In a lot of these communities, they've never been to these parks, especially in this DC area. We were busing in students that literally lived across the street from Anacostia Park and had no clue that was a national park, and had not been to the lily fields that are just packed in the summer and just don't get into these areas.
I mean, that's what I find amazing. I mean, we were talking about Kansas City. Vernon, somehow you managed work agency coming ocean agency coming from Kansas City, but there's kids that live in Oakland that have never been to the ocean. I mean, it really is amazing to me that, that's why our programs are to get them out there. We really have to work to get them out there.
Actually, if I may real quickly, because I think what Brittany and Chris mentioned, connect that idea of wellness. So I think that's important, because when it comes to conservation, stewardship, and also just the funding of our protected areas, we know the value of education. So when we're going to fund schools or an education system of health, we're going to put funding into the health system. And so to understand that our land and water parks, essentially protected areas, serve as one of those bridges to that these places are also for wellness, whether it's the healing hikes or the wellness walks, or the places for healthy parks, healthy people, which is that program. It's a park service program, Parks right? Parks RX. So you can go to a doctor and get a park prescription for it. And then that's a powerful thing when we're talking about engaging diverse communities. Wellness and health is a core piece that communities care about. So that if they know, I'm going to go into this park, into this protected space, because it's also going to benefit my wellness and also my family, my community. That's a really powerful message that I really think we need to continue to stress.
Right, completely. Jay, just going back real quickly to your programming, because what NABS does is just my favorite. That's why I always keep working with you guys. So can you tell me a little bit about why is it so important to get them to be inspired to be the next marine biologist or the next oceanographer? It's not just about getting them to scuba dive. It's taking it further. It's, okay, you can be a marine archaeologist. You can be an oceanographer. And these are the steps to get there. I've seen your curriculum. You do that with those students. Can you tell us a little bit about successes you've seen?
Yes, we've had a lot of success over, I would say, our 15 to 20 year span. And we've actually had kids that start out at 8 and now are PhDs in the field. And so that level of inspiration and stewardship, and really the reason why it's critically important is that they are our future as well as the future of the earth. And so with that being said, it's critically important to give them the tools, to give them the vision, and most importantly, give them the opportunity in order to look at these things and become stewards of the environment, stewards of the ocean, and like what we like to say in scuba diving is get totally immersed in nature. So it's nothing like being in that water and having the ocean around you. And then that moment, that very moment is when you become inspired and you understand.
Vernon.
Kate, if I can follow up with what Jay just said, another reason that it's very important is that the nation's demographics are changing, and agencies like mine, are beginning to recognize the need to have a more culturally diverse workforce because in order to solve some of the pressing problems facing the ocean, problems like climate change, ocean acidification, we need overfishing. We need the insights and skills and abilities of everyone in order to tackle these complex issues. That's why this is important.
Right. Jay, you'd mentioned immerse yourself in the experience. So Sanctuaries, this is Ocean Month in June, and we have now third year, I think it's 4, Get Into Your Sanctuary. So it's an annual celebration that works to raise awareness about the value of our sanctuaries as iconic destination for responsible recreation, obviously open stewardship activities. It's obviously open to the public. Do you all have ideas about how we can make this weekend more diverse and inclusive? Obviously we would love to have all your groups come out to a sanctuary and participate, but what are some ideas? Somebody just jump in.
I mean, I want to highlight what you guys do. We need to getting into the projects that you guys work on and getting into the parks.
Yeah.
I think one of the things is actually social media, in addition to actual what we call live experiences. One of the things that we do in scuba diving, someone who doesn't know how to swim, but really likes the idea, it's called Christians in the community. It's called Intro to Scuba. And you don't have to be a swimmer. We get you into the shallow end where you can stand up and literally put scuba dive. First time, and then for the first time, you get submersed in there and you're breathing on compressed air. And now you have this experience. And so, like our national parks and our national marine sanctuaries, it's experiential. Okay, and so the whole thing is to bring that experience to the community. Jose, is very important when you start talking about the culture and telling the stories. Along with telling the stories becomes what is that experience? And so if you can bring that experience to there and continuing to work with organizations like Jose and Brittany and myself and a whole that bridge, you become that bridge and that entree point. And so those are some of the ideas. Do the social media, the outdoor walks, the healing walks, the storytelling, the oral tradition. Those are the things that can be done to get them in the sanctuary and tell this cool story.
Right. I think going back to the whole audience discussion from earlier is that not everybody takes their information the same way. That's right. So I think that is, we did a study when we started our Medito program, and it was like a lot of the older Latino community takes it in cartoons. Mm-hmm. And that was very interesting to me. And so we did this big, huge marketing piece where we got a cartoonist to do cartoons to get them to come and use the sanctuary. And so I think that's a lesson that we all the same way, is that everybody doesn't take social media the same way. You mentioned social media. Obviously, millennials are charging with social media, new apps every day, right? Can't keep up with them. But you need to take the time and be diligent with that and understand communities and understand that, not everything can be in English, that, we need it in Spanish and even in San Francisco in Chinese and, all kinds of different things.
And I was going to add, and even mixed in Spanglish, for example, because you have to remember the mainstream is diverse now. So it isn't about necessarily saying, it has to be niche marketing. It's like, no, what you're doing already, because a lot of, for lack of a better word, corporate America has been doing it and they get it. So, and I notice it, I see it, and I think, why aren't we doing this in our conservation space world? And I'll close by just saying it is Ocean Month, and it is also Great Outdoors Month. So an example for us is we, at the invitation of the Park Service in San Francisco, for example, we're going to take families and youth kayak. It starts with that power. I've never done it before, but it starts with the power of invitation, the resources that the Park Service has, and then our community connections. And then we go from there for the experience.
Well, we're just going to have to get Greater Farallones National Marine Sanctuary on that. You can start right there in the Presidio.
Move right on over.
Right on over. Get into your sanctuary.
Move
right there. Right. Okay. So thank you, everyone. I think we've had a wonderful conversation today, and I know that all of you have helped me immensely. All of you, look forward to working with all of you more closely on all these different projects and programs, and to think up new ones, create new ones. to go out and have fun in the outdoors together, for sure. So thank you all for joining me today to talk about how we can all work together to connect diverse communities to the outdoors, you out there at home as well as here in the studio. Earth only has one ocean. Connecting everyone connects us all, and by connecting everyone to nature, we can work to break down social barriers. Stay tuned here at oceanslive.org for the next Chow panel at 1:15 p.m. Eastern Standard, 100 Years of National Parks and the next 100 Years of the Great Outdoors, of which, Chris, I think you're running to that one next, right? You are a popular man today. Then join us at 2:30 p.m. for our next Capitol Hill Ocean Talk, where we'll discuss how to get more children hooked on the outdoors through programs like Every Kid in a Park. So thanks for watching, everybody.